Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my show. Yesterday, we talked about time travel and how the government has the technology to manipulate space and time and has had it since the 1970s. Pretty crazy stuff. But if you thought that was crazy, we've got something even crazier today. Let me show you. I also changed the volume settings on these videos that I'm going to be playing, so they're going to be a bit louder, and I'm going to move my thing right here like this. I think that's a lot better. Today, we're talking about magnetic pole shifts. There's this whole theory that when the pole shift happens, the shift of the magnetic poles of the Earth, it causes a global cataclysm, much like the Noah's Ark story from the Bible or the book of Revelation, for example. A lot of people are saying that the causes of these cataclysms are because of these pole shift events. And I don't know much about this, I'll admit. That's why I have this video that my dad sent me. And he said he watched this, and it got him pretty paranoid. It's pretty difficult to get my dad paranoid. So, we'll check this out. I think we're in for a wild ride.
Ben, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure to be here. Cam, thanks for having me.
Okay, let's first talk about the big blackout that happened in Europe. So a blackout that knocked out Spain, Portugal, parts of France. The reports are, we don't know what caused this. We're not really sure what happened. And now they're even kind of looking at maybe it was a terrorist attack or maybe it was so they don't really know, but you seem to know what happened, what caused this big blackout in Europe. Can you explain what it was?
Sure. The explanation that is coming out of the official electricity group in Spain is that they say extreme temperatures caused a atmospheric oscillation which induced voltage inconsistencies in the high wire lines. Now, everything but the first part of that is true. There was certainly an induced electricity event in the atmosphere, and it definitely was the cause of these blackouts, but there was no extreme heat whatsoever. It is true that they just went 100% renewable, which is less reliable, but that is also not anywhere close to an explanation for what happened here. We are in the middle of a magnetic pole shift here on Earth, and this has been ongoing for several decades. It's been speeding up and speeding up.
So the only thing, I'm gonna add this, the only thing that I actually know about this is that from what I've heard, and I heard this theory years ago, was that it's happening gradually first, and then it just really quickly happens in like one day. The whole shift happens and there's some sort of cataclysm. But we're going to be experiencing some really strange stuff over the next couple of decades, possibly. And then it's just going to happen all of a sudden. But we're going to see what this guy has to say, because definitely knows more than me about this. That's for sure.
And in recent years, it has kind of crossed a threshold where it is pretty concerning at this point. And one of the things that is happening is it is letting dangerous amounts of energy from outer space into the atmosphere and into the Earth system. If we were to completely lose our magnetic field for good, we would end up looking like Mars. That's actually what happened to Mars. That's not what we have on deck, but on this planet, we go through these relatively short-lived, but still very, very relevant magnetic pole shifts. And
can you explain what that means? Like, just kind of break it down for dummies. Like, what is the magnetic pole, and what is it? Does that mean the Earth is literally going to flip?
There's a very good chance that something like that is going to happen towards the end of this, but primarily what we're talking about with this event just has to do with a magnetic shift rather than a geographic tilt.
Okay.
What this essentially means is Earth has a magnetic bubble around it called the magnetic field, the magnetosphere. And this protects us from solar flares and supernova and gamma rays and cosmic, all that scary stuff that you've heard about from space. We have a protective shield around our planet.
What's interesting, and I'm going to add to this, about old alchemical and ancient texts, they talk about this, and it's been proven by science too, that your heart has an electromagnetic sort of aura that comes out of it. And the way our bodies are designed are very similar to the way celestial bodies are designed, meaning planets. And we also have this electromagnetic field around us. So it's entirely possible that what's happening in this shift is also affecting your body, affecting your mood, the way you feel. There's a lot of people in the spiritual sort of space that talk about that as well. And when people talk about your aura, you have an aura. It's kind of similar. That you have this electromagnetic field around you. That's why you can kind of feel the vibes of people. You're like, maybe you're talking to somebody new, and it might be a good conversation that you're having with them or whatever, or you might feel like they're an okay human being, but something inside of you is telling you that something is off, like something is weird about this person, and chances are you're picking up on their energy. So whether you believe in that or not, there's a very real, there's scientific studies done on this as well, that we do have an electromagnetic field radiating from us. And it's pretty similar to Earth or, other planets as well. So that's also pretty interesting. As above, so below.
And all of those scary things from space, with maybe the exception of asteroids, a meteor strike. All of those scary things from space are electromagnetic energy. So this magnetic field wrapped around.
How is it that I watch these videos and I literally predict what they're about to say? Because you watch my last video, I was literally doing the same thing. And it's all, seriously, if you read old alchemical and like old hermetic and like old texts, they all say the same thing. And they all know things that science is now catching up to, which is insane. So, yeah, I'm going to play.
Our planet is the perfect protection, like a cocoon.
I'll stop talking.
Against that dangerous energy. But every few thousand years, the magnetic field kind of glitches out a little bit. And that's what's happening right now. It started very slowly several decades ago, and it has been progressively getting worse and worse and worse. And one of the things that comes along with that is we lose the protection. It kind of gets a little weak. Not necessarily everywhere all at once, but there will be weak spots that pop up. There will be sort of holes that form that allow this energy to come through. It's actually what we see in the beginning of the movie, The Core, which is about Earth's magnetic field failing. Now, the majority of that Hollywood film is just complete sci-fi nonsense. But what they show at that one point where there was a weak point that allowed that energy to come in, and it took out power, it was burning things, people's pacemakers all stopped in that city at the exact same time. And so that was actually pretty accurate given the fact that it's a Hollywood sci-fi movie. And that, to a certain degree, is what just happened in Europe. When I heard their explanation about the atmospheric oscillation and the problem.
Yeah, I knew the whole atmospheric oscillation thing was bullshit, but the whole net zero thing kind of made sense, because if they were like changing the way they, gather energy or use energy and that failed, that explanation kind of made sense to me. But we'll see what he has to say about how the pole shift actually affects this. But yeah, pretty wild stuff. I didn't buy the whole atmospheric thing, but definitely there's probably some truth to the net zero thing. I can't lie.
With the high voltage lines, I instantly ignored their explanation about there being extreme heat. First of all, because that's not possible to cause that kind of thing. And second of all, because it took 2 seconds to look and see there was no extreme heat anywhere in Europe. It was maybe half a degree above normal, and normal for Europe in April is just not that hot.
Right.
And so I started looking at some of the data on what's happening up at the top of the sky. We actually have pretty sophisticated ways of measuring and monitoring how much of this electromagnetic energy is getting past that magnetic shield and actually interacting in the atmosphere. And you could see it coming straight down through the top layers and integrating into the atmosphere. Now, when this happens, it's never a direct line of sight kind of thing. It comes down and then it shoots out to a side somewhere. And it usually goes where the wind is going, which is not all that hard to understand, especially since water is pretty conductive. Water and electricity tend to attract. And in the wind flowing in a given direction, that's where all the water is flowing. They detect electric currents when there's water flowing underground. So you may have heard things like this, but it's the same basic idea. So over the North Atlantic, you can see this energy coming down through, and it was a pretty preposterous amount. And I take a look at this data fairly regularly. This was more than we're used to seeing when the sun actually causes one of those solar storms that lets us see the northern lights. That happened in May and October of last year. What happened yesterday morning was actually to a significant degree stronger than that, except the sun didn't do anything. It was a weak spot, a hole, a crack that opened up in Earth's magnetic field and let that energy actually come into the Earth. And I sat there and I watched it. It came down through and then it followed the wind, which was pointed right at Portugal, Spain, and northwestern France. And this energy signature began first thing in the morning, as soon as dawn broke, which is when all of the problems began with their system. There is no way to cause this specific kind of issue with hacking or an EMP or terrorists or anything like that. If it's hacking, you basically get a system shut down or something like that. You don't get everything is working, they're just not in sync anymore. Like if you need to have something that comes and bangs together, like I know this is kind of weird, but let's say this is what's needed in order to keep something going. If they miss each other, that's a big problem. And that's actually what happened. But that can't happen from hacking or an EMP or anything else like that. Not to mention the fact that, people's cell phones that they were on, people who had Starlink internet, they could still get that. So it wasn't an EMP, it wasn't hacking, it wasn't anything other than exactly what they said happened, just not for the reason that they said it happened.
Why do you think that is? Why do they not know the reason you know?
I think they absolutely do know it, and they're just lying about it.
Why would they lie about that?
Because if they told the truth about what's happening on this planet tomorrow, nobody goes to work. Truckers aren't driving hundreds of miles to deliver food. Police aren't risking their lives on a potentially dangerous call. The world falls apart the very next day if they tell us what's going to happen. There'd be chaos, anarchy, and we would destroy everything that you would want to save, that you would love about civilization. It would be over the very next day.
But I mean, isn't this kind of like the notion of climate change, which, we can get into a little bit later. But, so they say, okay, there's doom and gloom coming, right? They've been telling people for decades now, climate change is coming and everybody's going to die, or the planet's going to be ruined. I mean, they've been saying this and we're not panicking. So wouldn't it be similar to that where it's, okay, yeah, the magnetic field the poles are shifting. It's going to take a while. Don't panic. But I guess the difference with climate change is they have an agenda, right? To tell us like, this is what you have to do in order to prevent it. Like they've got a plan, whereas I don't know what kind of a plan they would come up with for.
I'm just going to say this. Climate change is a Trojan horse for communism, for digital communism. That's what it is.
How do we stop the Earth's magnetic, shift?
Yeah, so
I'm not saying that climate change isn't real, like it's not actually happening, or maybe it's not happening to the degree that we're being told. But what I am saying is that whole agenda that's being pushed, like this net zero and all of this, it's meant to subjugate more than anything else. It's meant to create, to put a new system in place. That's what I mean.
So First of all, there are some people who are panicking quite a bit over climate change.
Mm-hmm.
No, I know, but I'm just saying we're not seeing like chaos in the streets where people are like, "Oh,
Well,
that's it, the doom and gloom, so we're not going to go to work."
so think about it. Half the people on the planet right now remember when they were trying to tell us that an ice age was coming.
Right,
And
right.
so
Yeah.
most of those people are like, these idiots don't know what they're talking about. I'm not
Yeah.
going to get scared about this. Then
Right.
you have people who, can understand some basic stuff about science. They can see the results of some of these global warming policies, and they're like, there's too many
Exactly.
holes here. And so
Exactly.
basically what we're left with is about 10 to 20% of the population terrified over climate change, and only about 40 or 50% of the population even believing anything they have to say at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. But I mean, how quickly
Um,
would this magnetic shift happen? So that's what I'm saying. Like climate change, the story is, in a decade, we're all going to be doomed. How long would we have if they came out and told us the truth? Look, this is what happened. How long would we have before we're in a dire situation? I mean, is this going to happen in our lifetime, do you think?
It'll happen before 2050.
So explain what it would look like.
Okay, there's no more electricity on Earth. We are back in the Stone Age. There's no way to purify water. There's no way to distribute it. You turn on your faucet in your home, nothing comes out. There's no refrigeration, so food can't be stored and shipped. Within about
Take
48
notes,
hours, the
people.
stores are completely empty. Gas stations don't work. ATM machines don't work, credit card machines don't work, 911 doesn't work, there's no internet, air conditioning, heating. There's basically just you and everyone around you back in the natural world looking to eat, looking to get water, and looking for shelter for their family. Um, the other thing about this is when the sun actually does throw one of those storms at us and our magnetic field is much weaker, the induction of electricity onto this planet is going to be much, much stronger. Picture we get hit by the sun, and within 24 hours, every electrified structure on the planet has burned down. That's homes, buildings, hospitals, everything just burned down in one day.
So you think it would happen in a moment like that, in a day?
Well, what I just described to you would.
Yeah.
The overall magnetic pole shift is something it's been going on for several decades, and it's going to take probably a decade or two more to complete. It's about how bad things get along the way. It's kind of like, all right, so when somebody ends up dying of cancer, are they running marathons every day, and then they just drop dead in the middle of a marathon after they're sprinting like an Ironman? No, that's not what happens. They notice first they don't have a lot of energy, and then they're getting too sick, and then other things start to go wrong in their bodies. I mean, maybe an organ of theirs starts to fail, and it's a slow process that they go through to actually die from that cancer, right?
Right.
That's a little more accurate if we're talking about what's going to happen in this event. So, as our magnetic cocoon of protection fades, this energy comes in, and first it does two things. One, this energy, because of its interaction with water vapor, is going to create tremendous storms. Absolutely phenomenal storms, and phenomenal not necessarily in the great
Yeah,
use
not in
of
a
the
good
word,
sense.
mind-blowing levels of storms. While it's doing this, that is electromagnetic radiation that is not exactly good for our DNA. It messes with.
I told you what I say. It's going to affect your body too because we are electromagnetic beings. We have an electromagnetic field around us. And if something is going on in the earth that disrupts that, then we are going to get physically affected by that. Sicknesses, mood swings, all types of crazy shit. So, yeah. I don't think part of the reason people are depressed is, I mean, it's obviously social media and the fact that we live in a very high paced world and whatnot. But another theory that I have that I can't really prove, but this sort of proves it, I guess, is that this could be happening an electromagnetic shift in the earth or space or whatever.
all of our bodily systems. A lot of people don't know this, but everything from blinking to our heartbeat to taking a step to talking to thinking, all of it has to do with what they call ion channels, basically things moving around that are electromagnetically charged. This would be sodium, magnesium,
I promise
calcium.
I don't
There's
watch
several
these
others.
videos
And
before I
there's a
react to
reason we
them.
call those things electrolytes, because they are electrically charged. And we actually notice, to a smaller degree, every time the sun causes one of those solar storms like we had last year, the more vulnerable aspects of the population start to see their electrolytic activity inside their body be messed with quite a bit, whether that's something in their mitochondria and they're extra fatigued, whether that's something in their neurons and they become more emotionally unstable or more.
I've also heard this. I don't know if this is true. I'm not going to look it up right now because, I just want to watch this video. But I heard that when there's a full moon, a lot of the times there's an increase of deaths at senior homes. Do with that what you will. Or look that up because I'm not going to look it up right now.
Panic reactive, something like that. It can trigger a heart attack. It can induce autoimmune diseases to flare up. It can cause seizures, migraines, etc. And so this is one of the things that is happening. It also degrades cognition. So if it seems like the world right now out there is getting a little dumber while at the same time,
I promise you I don't watch these videos before I see them. He's literally on the dot about what I was saying. Obviously, he's studied this more than me, so I don't have the articulacy or language to sort of explain these things as well as he can. But you see what I'm saying? And a lot of older texts, especially Hermetic, I have a Kabbalion right here. Obviously, this book is from the early 1900s, but it has a lot of old sort of Hermetic wisdom in here. I recommend people read this book because a lot of the things that the ancients were saying is making sense now. It's making sense in science specifically. Like all of the things that science was sort of denying for a very long time, we're just finding out. So, very interesting.
time becoming more emotionally unstable and more panic reactive? Yes, they are. And there's a scientific explanation for it. And it's not just the fact that mainstream everything is pushing degeneracy and Satanism over traditions and things like that. There's an actual.
I literally predicted him. How am I so smart? I'm just connecting to the ether. I'm connecting to the field. I'm just gathering and just downloading everything. And before it happens, this is why you should watch my channel. This is why you should listen to me, because I predict the future without even knowing it. I just predict things. It's just how I am. Download. Boom. Literally saying what I was just saying. Download, baby. Get downloads from the divine.
Scientific electromagnetic explanation for why people are acting like this. But as that is happening, these particles are also destroying the ozone above our heads. Now, this does two things. One, it lets in more ultraviolet light, which has an even bigger effect on the atmosphere. So we have two different ways that storms and weather are getting attacked, one by the particles themselves, and then also by the extra ultraviolet light that is coming in because those particles destroy the ozone. And while our bodies are taking the hit from those same particles, we're also beginning to take extra ultraviolet light that is breaking through, which too much of is bad for us as well. And so in two different ways, it's a climate hit and a biological radiation hit. While these things are going on, we don't have any power at some point. We're basically back to living like cavemen, something that the United States government actually looked into, and they said when this happens, 99% of people are going to be dead in 6 months, and that's globally. And to make matters even worse, birds are not the only things that use Earth's magnetic field for their migrations. Animals use it for other kinds of navigation, finding reproductive zones so they can have children, for foraging so they can eat. And it's half the creatures in the sea, turtles, whales, a million different kinds of fish, sharks, plankton, chlorophyll, shrimp. It's mammals as well, like deer and bear, and even wild dogs. Reptiles use it. Every single insect uses Earth's magnetic field. Plants use Earth's magnetic field along with signatures of
As
ultraviolet
above,
light
so
to know when
below.
to make seeds, when to flower, when to germinate, all of this stuff. So, literally, up and down the food chain, we're getting hits everywhere while we're getting a double dose of climate chaos, while we are getting a double dose of electromagnetic biological impacts. And the animal kingdom is losing its mind all around us because it can't navigate. It doesn't know what's going on. And all the while, we have to figure out how to live like cavemen, where we can't just turn on a faucet or drive to the store or order something on Amazon anymore. If there's a problem, you can't call anyone for help. It's on you. Oh, it's 110 degrees where you are today? Find some shade. Good luck. Oh, it's negative 45 degrees where you are today? Hope you have a lot of firewood. Oh, you're in the middle of a big city when this all goes down? I hope you're the biggest, strongest, and you have the most bullets of anyone. Otherwise, you're never getting out. Because I'll tell you what, inside the cities, the food and the water disappear more quickly, and the violence starts
Yeah.
more quickly as well. So, does that answer your question? That's what we have coming here in the next decade or two.
Wonderful. Okay. So you say that the magnetic,
She's
the
freaking
cocoon, the
out, bro.
protection would be weakened. And so this would allow for these events to happen. Would it, with the poles shifting, would it strengthen back up at some point? And how long would that take?
It does. It does. This happens to a small degree every 6,000 years. And then every other cycle, every 12,000 years, it's a really big one. But the worst of it.
So it's kind of like the Mayan calendar sort of thing. And all of these sort of, I guess, other cataclysms that probably happened in the past are like pale in comparison to when this one happens, judging by what he's saying. Crazy times we're living in, man.
It only lasts a week to a couple of weeks, and then we recharge back up and things go back to normal. In fact, probably even a little better. Most of it only lasts a week to a couple of weeks, and then we recharge back up and things go back to normal. In fact, probably even a little better than normal. There are stories of the last 4 or 5 cycles recorded on the Indian subcontinent, and at least the last 2 cycles in both China and from Australian Aboriginals. And they all describe basically a week or two of hell on earth, followed instantly by a golden age.
So we would just have to survive those.
I guess we could be optimistic. Just think about it like this, right? If we enter another golden age, I mean, we're at a pivotal, if this is true, we are living in pivotal times. If you're around my age, if you're 20 or maybe 30 or even 40, you will be alive when this happens. And if you make it through this couple of weeks or whatever the case is, whatever happens, this crazy stuff that happens this next couple of decades, and you make it through this difficult time, can you imagine what type of stories you're going to have to tell your kids? You're going to be like the builders of this new golden age generation. So look, if this happens, let's remain optimistic, all right? Even if it doesn't happen, I think that you should be preparing yourself. I think you should be learning about things. You should become more capable as an individual. You should become as dangerous as possible. Learn how to fight, learn how to shoot guns, shoot a bow and arrow, learn how to hunt. That's something I need to do for sure, because I have none of those skills really. I know how to shoot guns, but let's just be optimistic and let's learn about things. Let's learn about the world. Let's try to understand it, which is the point of my channel, which is the point of why I'm doing this. Because the reason why I'm doing this is because I feel like there's so much I don't know. Obviously, I'm very young, but we all don't know a lot about what we like. What do you actually know when you think about it? All the stuff that you're told about history and everything that's happened in the world, like how much of that actually came from your personal experience that you can attribute to? Most of it you just read in history tech. Like you have no idea, 0 idea about what actually happened in the past. We don't know anything. We're just dropped here in this crazy, weird world, and we don't know what the hell we're doing here, why, what's going on. And I think part of the reason I started this channel and wanted to do this was to try to get some answers. And I think if you're a smart person, you should probably try to become very capable and understand the world on a different level, more than most people are willing to. I think that if this doesn't happen per se, that would only be to your benefit as an individual. And you get to share that knowledge, you get to share that with the future generations to come. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So let's be optimistic here. I mean, this is some pretty scary stuff, but I think it's important that we not only prepare for something like this, but prepare ourselves in general. Just be equipped to handle things. I think that's important.
Those couple of weeks and not be radiated to death.
That's the worst of it, yes, but we also
Be radiated to death.
She looks freaked out.
That's the worst of it, yes, but we also have to survive up until then. So, for example, Earth's magnetic field is already weakening and weakening and weakening as the poles are shifting. We may go all the way until the late 2040s and then have all of this happen, or the sun could take out power to the whole planet and burn down every building next week, and then we have about a decade or two to figure out how to live like cavemen and not die from the elements, not die from starvation, not die because some other desperate human killed us, or we're looking for food in the woods and we get attacked and eaten by a bear. And then we have the zenith of the catastrophe 10, 15, 20 years later. And so,
Oh, for fuck's sake.
okay, yes, the worst of it's only going to be that we have the woods and we get attacked and eaten by a bear, not die from the elements and then have all of this happen, or the sun could take out power to the whole planet and burn down every building next week, and then we have about a decade or two to figure out how to live like cavemen and not die from the elements, not die from starvation, not die because some other desperate human killed us, or we're looking for food in the woods and we get attacked and eaten by a bear. And then we have the zenith of the catastrophe 10, 15, 20 years later. And so, okay, yes, the worst of it's only going to be that, but what if the sun throws a big solar flare at us next week? And we're back in the Stone Age for 20 years and then have to deal with Earth's magnetic pole shift. So, in terms of thinking about this, getting ready for this, maybe you should do what the governments and the world billionaires have been very quietly doing for several years already, which is
Building
preparing for
bunkers.
this to happen.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's a reason why Elon Musk is so focused on going up and digging down. One of his billion-dollar businesses is the Boring Company.
Yeah.
You know, Richard Branson, Virgin Galactic. Not too many of those Virgin Galactic things that can make it to space still fly. But the two that I know of for sure that still can, they're in the exact same place, and beneath the control tower is Richard Branson's $45 million bunker. Jeff Bezos, he is hollowing out a mountain in New Mexico, and across the street is his Blue Origin launch facility. And if you were to dump a lake right on top of both of those things, where that water would drain to is where he has his $300 million super yacht that he calls the Black Pearl. These are not coincidences. There's a reason why governments are digging underground like crazy, and it seems like they are spending like there's no tomorrow. I wonder if they know something we don't.
Yeah.
Acting so recklessly with reckless abandon.
Yeah, that's always what I wondered. It's like, we have an inflated currency and a fiat system where they can print as much money as they want. They seem to be just recklessly spending. And I guess part of the reason this theory also does make sense. But the reason I thought this was happening was because they're trying to control all of these resources. And basically, like I said, all of this climate change agenda stuff is like a Trojan horse for digital communism. The middle class and poor people are getting squeezed. It's more difficult to afford things. My generation can't afford a home, right? And we're looking at some very scary times where the most people are going to be subjugated to a system where these massive corporations and governments own everything and you rent everything from them. I talked about this in my Great Reset video and on B1 Productions, my documentary channel. You can go check that out. And I thought that was the reason that they're doing this. You know, they're creating this fiat system and they're spending all this money on stuff. But this is also a pretty good reason too. That's something I should add to the list.
And because they know that reckoning is right around the corner.
Yep.
That's sort of where you have to come with all of this. And as you sort of alluded to earlier, or maybe you were just asking the question and we're just very, very luckily on point. During the worst of it, during the zenith of this, the Earth absolutely turns like this. And there's lots of evidence for this. My favorite one has to do with the mammoths. Have you heard of the mammoths that they dug out of the ice near the Arctic? And they were frozen so quickly that the food didn't digest in their mouths and stomachs.
Whoa.
You know, everybody asks the wrong question when they hear about those things.
That is crazy. I did not know that. The food did not digest in their stomachs. Holy crap.
Everybody asks a question that doesn't make any sense to me. Everybody asks, how do you freeze a mammoth so quickly to halt chemical digestion in its mouth and its stomach? And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, that's not the right question. The right question is, what were they eating? Because we're 12,000 years into a warm, dare I say, hot interglacial cycle. 12,000 years out of the ice age, okay? And they still had to dig those things out of 20, 30 feet of ice. Mm-hmm. They were frozen in the glacial period when it was 10, 20, 30 degrees colder, and they need 1,000 pounds of vegetation a day. So if here we are, 12,000 years into a hot period, and they dug them out of that much ice, what was it like there 12, 15,000 years ago whenever they were frozen? There was no way there was any grass there. There's no way there was any plants for them to be eating. What were they doing there in the first place? And of course, the answer is the Earth looked like this, the equator about here, and then it went like this, and they all froze.
Uh-huh.
It's the same reason why, I'm going to pull this back, in Scandinavia, Finland, Norway, Sweden, whenever they dig up a forest that was frozen and covered by glaciers at some point past 12,000 years ago, the trees have no rings. Do you know what tree rings are? Those are the seasons. Now, there's a place on Earth right now where trees grow with no rings, and that's called the equator because it's the same season year round, which tells us that part of the world, Norway, Finland, Sweden, used to be near the equator. There's a classified mission called Project Nanook from the 1940s. The United States government was worried that Russia was going to come over the top, come over the North Pole and attack. So we worked out a deal with Canada to come up to here and start figuring out how to operate as a military up here. And one of the things they had to do, because back then all navigation was with a compass, right? They had to figure out where the magnetic pole is, and they figured out it was moving a little bit, so they started digging down into the ice to learn more. And the first thing they found was a layer of polar fossils, kind of what you'd expect, but right underneath it was tropical fossils, and then polar, tropical, polar, tropical. And that only works if the planet is tilting 90 degrees to put it at the equator and then bringing it back, and then putting it at the equator and bringing it back. There's several other lines of evidence we could look to, like all the ones that convinced Albert Einstein that the planet does this. He actually died trying to figure out the math and physics of how that tilt works. He had been convinced it happens. He was just, okay, how does it happen? Mm-hmm. And he died not figuring that out. He never looked at Earth's magnetic field or the sun or any of the stuff that we know about now. He didn't have that information. Humans didn't really know it. But all of this information suggests this is what happens to our planet. And it's exactly what is told in all the ancient stories as well, which I do believe have a little more history than they're given credit for. You know, things like myth and religious texts. I think that there's some history in there. They remember things that they saw and stories that were passed down. And they weren't something somebody just made up, the earth swaying to and fro like a drunkard. Everybody's heard that one from the Bible. But how about chapter 65 of the book of Enoch? The first line is, "And Noah saw the earth turned over and knew its destruction was near." These things are found in nearly every myth, with the great flood, which is caused by the ocean sloshing around as the planet goes like this and basically dumping onto continents. I mean, imagine you've got a full glass, like all the way full to the top, and then you start going like this.
Yeah.
Water's going to spill out everywhere. So that's essentially what's on our bingo card here before 2050.
So how long does it take for the shift to go 90 degrees? Is that like it
One
happens
day.
in a day? One day. It literally
One
just
day.
flips in
One
a
day.
day.
Yes.
How is that possible? I mean, I would think it would
So-
just slowly turn, but you're saying it just goes whoop, flips. Just like that.
Whenever you have something that is spinning, okay, if it is not perfectly homogeneous, so let's say it's made out of paper mache, except for one little thing up here that's lead, okay, so obviously that part would weigh the most. If it is spinning, eventually it's going to want that heaviest thing to be at the point of greatest centrifugal force. This is a basic physics principle of things that spin. Well, what is that on the Earth? It's where ice has dumped north and south. That wants to be at the equator right now. Right now, the North and South poles want, from a physics perspective, to be here. That's what they want right now. The reason they're not like that right now is because the crust and the mantle are locked together. And that's what's going to change during the zenith of this event. The crust will be unlocked from the mantle. And then whenever we have that in physics, once it starts to move, it only takes one rotation for that to get down to the center, and it just stays there. Stops perfectly. As soon as it gets to where it's supposed to be, it stabilizes the entire system. So one rotation here on our planet is one day. You just apply the basic physics principle once the crust is unlocked from the mantle, and yeah, it'll be one day. And then,
Okay,
of course, afterwards, we have a new North and South pole that are gaining ice, and then 12,000 years later, when the crust is unlocked in this next event, it tilts exactly 90 degrees again in one rotation, in one day.
Okay, where does the United States end up? Do we know which way it's tilting? Is it going, are we going to end up in the North Pole or the South Pole?
Okay. Einstein did that math. So basically, if you have a globe, take Greenland like this and tilt Greenland to the equator-ish until India is up on top and South America is at the bottom. And what it's going to look like is the United States is in the southern hemisphere now, okay? And basically, Canada and Mexico switch climates. Florida and Maine switch climates. Texas and Montana switch climates. Places like Pennsylvania, some of the I states, where I am in Colorado, we're basically at the same latitude, just in the south. You know, and if I want a beach vacation, I'm gonna have to look in what is now northern Canada. Maybe the Hudson Bay will be the new great beach destination. Granted, we won't have any way to get there, and they'll have no way to promote their tourism industry because we're going to be living in caveman times again. But still, you want to tour and go see, ice and skiing and stuff. I'm sure they're going to have some great skiing in Mexico once they invent skiing again. Somebody's going to have to reinvent skiing. But once they do, there's going to be great skiing in Mexico from all of this.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, and when do you think this shift happens? Is this what you're thinking happens before 2050?
Yeah.
Really? So what are you doing to
Yes.
prepare? Are you preparing?
Yeah, I want to hear this.
Yes, I am. We have a survival community. That's the other
Okay.
thing. You can't do this by yourself. Lone wolfing it is not a good option. You need a group of like-minded people who know what's coming. We're all on the same page in terms of what we need to grow food-wise, the animals we need to take care of, the plan for defending our area, the plan if we have to abandon our area, plan for childbirth, plan for child education, plan for resource management, all these other things, basically replanning civilization from stage one.
Wow.
And then keeping our eyes on the ball, on everything that's going on so it doesn't sneak up on us a little too quickly.
Okay, so you and I, since I'm in Idaho and you're in Colorado, we'll be okay as far as the climate goes. We're not going to freeze over or burn up too much, right?
I just wouldn't get caught in downtown Boise when this whole thing happens.
Okay.
I try to avoid downtown Boise when this goes down.
Okay, okay. So interesting. Where can people go to start preparing for this?
Yeah.
Do you have a community? You said you have a community. Is there like a website they can go to look into
Well,
how to prepare?
when I say I have a community, I mean there is a private group of individuals who is separately with me planning, and it's about a quarter mile that way,
Okay.
is where the majority of it's going to be. But people need to be aware first and foremost. They need to fully understand what's coming, and then they need to just resign themselves to the fact that no more naps, no more sleep. Like, you got to have eyes open and be paying attention now for the rest of your life. It doesn't mean you don't actually get to sleep at night. It means you don't get to go back to forgetting that this exists. While you're going to classes, while you're going to your job, while you're taking care of your family, you now have another job. And
Yeah.
if you don't like that, guess what? Only the strong survive. I'll see you in the afterlife if you can't hack it.
Yeah. Okay, so what should governments be doing? I mean, here they are pushing to go all electric all the time.
Nothing.
Well, should they maybe
Absolutely
like get
nothing.
us away from electricity? That seems like that would be the first step, to not rely
Put it
only
this
on
way.
electricity.
I'm not sure how we got here as a species, but the people who are in charge are by far the most corrupt and dumbest people on the planet. I don't
Yeah.
want them doing anything. They're idiots. They're complete idiots, and they're corrupt, and they'll just make it worse than they already are. Kind of
Okay.
like what they're about to try to do to climate.
You know what? To be completely fair, I think they seem like idiots, but like I said, they're printing all this money to pool up resources. They clearly know that something is happening. These people are building bunkers, so they're not as stupid. I think that they're preparing, but they're not telling anyone. What's obviously they're not going to fucking tell anyone that this shit's happening. But I feel like there's definitely people in high levels of maybe government or, you know, whatever that definitely know. Definitely know. So, yeah, before this video gets too long, I mean, you can watch this whole interview on Kim Iverson. That was my second ever episode, which was first we talked about time travel, and now we talked about magnetic pole shifts and global cataclysms. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And I hope you guys are preparing, you know, because whether this is true or not, I think that it's advantageous for anyone to prepare for something either like this or, you know, this global dystopia, this globalist dystopia that they're trying to build. And I think it's only to your benefit if you become the most dangerous, intelligent, and respectable person you can become. So that's my outlook on that. I'll definitely keep looking into this. I'm sure we'll make follow-ups on this. And you guys just have a wonderful day. And I will see you on the next episode.